What happens to people that focus on their role in life as their identity? When that role shifts into something else? And what do we do with our identity and who we are and our sense of self and finding purpose when things change? Today my guest is Dr. Haley Perlus. Since she was 12 years old, she aspired toward a career in sports psychology and was a junior world champion athlete. Since earning her Ph.D. at 28 years old, she became a professor and a well-known public speaker and consultant to national teams and scholarship athletes, and of course, an author and an appointed industry leader. Dr. Haley Perlus combines her first-hand experience with advanced academic expertise, where she holds a Ph.D. in sports psychology along certifications in coaching, fitness, and nutrition. Her impact has reached elite organizations including Marriott Hotels, Thrive Magazine, NASA, and more. And today she's going to talk about identity and a lot of really excellent mindset approaches. She's very positive, and I do believe that you are going to have a great time listening to this episode and learning from her. All right, let's get to the interview. Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Haley Perlus. It's my pleasure to have you on today.
Paul, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. So everyone knows a little bit about you because I've already read your bio to everyone. But I do want to get a little bit more into your story. But before that, I think what the listeners want is a nugget of what we're kind of going to focus on. And one of those things was identity and what you've learned about identity and how that is an important piece to focus on versus just like what we do for a living or what we do at, in our personal lives, like the doing versus who we are as a being. I don't know if you could talk a little bit about maybe your paradigm and how and what you think of kind of an open floor about that.
Yes, I'm a big believer in not wrapping our identity around the roles that we have in life. I think that saves us a lot of anxiety, maybe even depression, confusion, because our roles come and go. And sometimes we choose to change our roles, we choose to change our jobs, we choose to become parents, but then sometimes our roles are gone when we don't want them to. So unfortunate things happen. There's deaths, and so that role that we once had, whether we're a parent, whether we're a sibling, whether we're a child, those roles shift sometimes. And so if we wrap ourselves up in our roles, then we can suffer from anxiety when those roles go away. So I have what I feel is a more productive solution, which is really looking at your identity as who you are and your purpose in life, and then applying your identity and your purpose to the roles you play. So when they come and go, we're still going to be okay.
So basically what I'm hearing, some of that, my reflection is, we're not clinging to a society sort of culturally determined role, such as a teacher or an athlete, or I'm a manager or director, or I'm an actor. But you're saying be more of who you are. And then in that vocation or in that role or whatever you're playing in society or culture, or maybe just a family role, instead of, just having to make money, maybe you're a parent, right? That's a role we can play. That you are bringing yourself to that versus like depending on that to make you who you are. Is that what I'm hearing?
Absolutely. So my background is sport. And so a lot of this learning came from athletes who, when they're no longer an athlete, whether they choose to retire, whether they're forced out of their sport due to injury or just not being good enough, many of them suffer greatly mentally because they don't know who they are and they don't know how to transition into their next role because they don't have an identity. Their whole identity was being an athlete. So instead of wrapping your identity around being an athlete, I like to help all of us again, create our identity about our best qualities, about our top values. And then we apply our best qualities, our top values to the roles that we play. And some of us have 5 roles to play. Some of us have 10. Some of us have 1. Roles come and go, but our identities, that stays forever.
Oh, I like that. I can identify with that because I'm in a bit of a career shift myself, where I've been a therapist for 18 years, seeing either a full or a medium-sized caseload. And now I have a very small group of people I still work with because I like working with them and I like being a therapist. But I'm also doing these other things, which people know about if they listen to the podcast. I won't get into it. But in business and the nonprofit I'm leading and some other things like that. And that is a big shift because mentally, if you're really attached to that, you know, telling people, oh, I'm a therapist, right? And then talking about therapy. But then if you're not doing that anymore, it's like, whoa, you know, you have to really reassess. So I want to get some examples of that. I have heard that there are athletes that suffer, you know, have horrible depression and suicidal ideation sometimes after their sports careers. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely, because they don't know who they are. Mm-hmm. There was a company that I used to work for, and what we did specifically was help athletes transition out of sport into their next career. And one of the greatest exercises that I did with these athletes was I asked them to tell me what they love about their sport, what they learned about their sport, what they learned from their sport, all the skills and strengths. And very seldom do you get an athlete saying they love the smell of the ball. Right? Or, you know, it's very, very often the answers are camaraderie, discipline, coachability, you know, all of these strengths that they have, that they own, that can be transferred to their next career. And suddenly now they have an identity. Suddenly now they have skills, they have strengths, they have values. They're not wrapped up in their athlete identity. They're wrapped up in their self-concept identity. And now they have more of an open mind. Now they have more of a curiosity. What can happen in this next chapter of my life?
I like that. Yeah. And I did play sports, but never professionally, obviously. I wouldn't be in this shape if I had done that. That's a joke. But I also wouldn't be in this career. I
laughed.
Yeah, okay, good. Hopefully you got it. Hopefully the listeners like it. But basically, another thing that struck me about athletics, and this is, you know, going back to identity, is that in all of your life, if you're playing something that's maybe a popular sport where there's spectators, you have all of these people rooting for you and saying good job, and you have this whole team possibly around you. I think, you know, certain sports like skiing, necessarily you have a team, but it's not as, you know, you're not tossing skis to one another or whatever. You're kind of still on the team, but you know, you have, let's just say that the typical popular sports in the US, like, you know, football and soccer and basketball and hockey, you have this team around you in volleyball, right? And you're all like, you know, working together, rowing, you're all working together. And so not only do you have these spectators cheering you on, you have this external validation, then you have these close relationships. So I can imagine if you then, you know, for some reason you go to college and you're like, oh, well, I don't have time to be on sports teams anymore. Or you get, or you become a pro and then you retire. All of a sudden, not only are a lot of the encouragers gone, and then you have coaches, you know, you have tons of coaches who are always got your back, like a mentor. The coach is gone. The fans are gone. Maybe your parents, hopefully, if you have them, are still like, good job. We remember you back in the day when you were good at sports. And then, of course, you've got, you know, all of your teammates, like a diaspora of like dispersed somewhere else. And so, you know, I could imagine that being a massive crisis. We see that with college students when they leave the dorms. They lose all this like it kind of built-in friendship, and they go through a crisis like, who's my friends, where are my boundaries, who am I supposed to hang out with, how do I find people, you know? So can you talk a little bit about that too? I was thinking about that aspect.
No, it's a great point, Paul. It's what you're talking about is all the external stimuli, all the external motivators, all the external factors. And we need each other. I'm a strong believer in human connection. I do not want to underestimate human connection and relatedness. Relatedness is part of intrinsic motivation, which I call heart motivation. So that's important. But autonomy and competence is also the heart motivation, intrinsic motivation. And we cannot let the heart fall because we're so focused on everything and everyone that we have in our lives. We have to make sure that we are the star of our own movie. We have to make sure that we are the ones making moves, moving forward, seeking new friends when you move from one college to another. A lot of people are retiring, and there's a fear of retiring because, like you just said, in a professional athlete's world, suddenly no one's cheering for them every day because they're just not in the spotlight. Well, for many careers in retirement, there's a lot of isolation. There's those external rewards or external variables subside. And we don't want to experience anxiety because of that. We don't want to experience sadness because of that. So what I like to do is really make sure that we're putting a spotlight on ourselves and really creating an identity that really has nothing to do with anybody else. We're 100% in control. We're 100% self-confident. And then we go out in the world and we relate our best selves to everyone so we can create these new teams. And teams is like family unit, friend unit, community. Wherever we go, we can create these things because we're bringing our best self to these roles, to these environments, instead of being created because of those roles and those environments.
Yeah, I could imagine just speculatively that if I was a very successful athlete, not every one of us on my team would need to do a lot of internal work if you have built-in friends, coaches, and external validation all the time, right? And so, it could be a challenge to be able to get that time away to reflect and then to be able to kind of develop those skills. I could imagine that might be difficult. I'm not sure what your thoughts are on that.
No, absolutely. That's why when suddenly the team goes away and you don't have someone feeding you at your every meal and giving you all of your, scheduling, you don't have that anymore. It goes away. A lot of people get lost.
Right. And it can happen anywhere, right? If you're known at a job or if you're in a music band or in theater or any sort of group activity can kind of tend to that. But I think that athletes are almost like worse off because you have so many layers of that are surrounding you from a young age all the way until you retire from sports. So maybe you could, I think this is a good time because you do have a PhD in sports psychology, which I mentioned in the pre-show, but could you explain a bit about your journey, your personal journey?
Yes, absolutely. And again, I don't want people to think or listeners to think that I live in a bubble because I didn't. My journey actually started because of an influencer, my coach, my leader.
Okay.
So I grew up in Canada and I was a fairly good ski racer, which is why you brought up skiing earlier.
Right.
And I was competing at 12 in what would be considered the world championships for my age group. And I was bib number 9 and bib number 8 is in the starting gate. So I have about 45 seconds until it's my turn to go and compete. And my coach comes up to me, pulls out $100 Canadian bill, places it in front of my nose and tells me that he has bet on me to win this race.
Oh no.
So in that, well, that's one way to go. So in that moment, I am at an emotional and a mental fork in the road. On one hand, I could say, oh no, what if I lose? What if I make a mistake? How could he bet on me? On the other hand, I could say, oh yeah, if my coach believes in me so much that he's willing to bet on me, doesn't that mean I'm doing something right? Now, I can't tell you, Paul, that with the 10 seconds that I had left at 12 years old, I stood there and I said, Haley, you are at an emotional and a mental fork in the road. How are you going to be your most resilient?
Right.
But I do remember thinking, wow, if my coach is betting on me, he must really believe in me. And if he believes in me, why shouldn't I believe in myself? So I went down that race course. I won, which was great. My coach congratulated me, kept all the money for himself. But he looked at me and he said, it's amazing what you can do with your performance when you get your head straight.
Oh.
And then 2 weeks later, he brought a sports psychologist to come and speak to my team. And the bells went off. And I went home at 12 and I told my parents that I wanted to be a sports psych gal when I grew up.
Wow. That is such an interesting story. I always feel like he was like being a trickster by teaching you that lesson somehow. Like,
he did something for me, and people think, it was the spur of the moment. I don't think it was the spur of the moment at all. Now, he's no longer with us, so I can't ask him the question.
right.
But I believe he was training me to embrace pressure the entire time he was my coach. I can think back to moments, and I can think back to just situations. I think he was training me to embrace the pressure of life at such a young age, 12 years old. And the interesting thing, though, is that I was always going to be just working in sports, marry a quarterback and have that life and do all those things. But as I was going through my graduate school, starting my own consulting practice, becoming an adjunct lecturer, getting married, getting divorced, all of these things that we go through as adults, I very quickly realized that all the training and all the principles and all the information that I've learned and experienced is not just for sport athletes. So now, today, I always apply sports psychology principles, but I apply it to business, to health behavior change, to, sport and life beyond.
Oh, that's great. So yeah, you brought your own story and your own experience into your work, and as you've evolved as a human. And I actually think the best therapists, the best coaches, and the best leaders don't just preach at us. They bring us stories or ideas and challenges from their own personal experience. And I actually, if I had a judgment when your coach bet on you, because I thought, that's naughty behavior, Pete Rose, like that's what I was thinking. But then I thought, okay, well,
I wouldn't recommend it. It's not like we tell coaches to be the best coach, go bet on your team.
Yeah, we don't want to do that. But I also think at that moment, whatever, it was like a side thing, and it was culturally probably way different back then, whenever that was. I don't know, whenever
way back then. What are you saying, Paul?
I'm sorry. Well,
no, you're good. No, you're fine. You're fine.
The 90s, I don't know, 2000s, but
it worked.
It worked, right? He got you motivated, and embracing pressure is something I do think young people in the U.S. are having a real problem with. And I don't want to point fingers completely. I think some of it's social media, because they see other people doing it and they're like, oh, how did they get to point 200? I'm at point 0, right? To be able to do something that they're doing that's fun on social media, like, I don't know, just sports or games or painting or music or whatever it might be, right? Or pottery. I think a lot of kids are getting stuck in freeze. And I also think parents aren't pushing their kids they're afraid of them hurting themselves, and I get it. I don't want my kids to break their leg, or I don't have a kid, but if I did, I don't want them to break their leg or whatever, right? But at the same time, like, if I pack them in bubble wrap their whole life, they're not going to learn that life is stressful, like, especially when your parents are, eventually your parents will get older and they'll pass away and they're not going to be there to protect you. So how do you protect yourself? So one of the things that I love about sports psychology, and I really wish more therapists in our profession would take this, and I think they're getting there because we have exposure therapy and things, but really helping people inoculate themselves to stress so that it doesn't take such a huge impact on your body that you're like, oh, well, I can do this. I got that, the I, right? The identity, the positive mindset, but also the practice, because the first time you try something new, you're going to fail at it. I mean, guaranteed. And I always say the best, what's that?
No, I was going to say, I literally just came back from the Red Sea where I went to sports camp. I went to learn how to wing foil. Do you know what that is?
It sounds like one of those things where you jump off a cliff with a wings on, but is that what it is? Or?
You can kind of think of it in your mind's eye as windsurfing.
Okay.
However, the sail is a wing that's not attached to the board, and the board is a foil. So when you get up on foil, the board is literally like 2 feet above the water.
Oh.
And so you're basically flying on water. But my point being is that I never learned how to do this. And I went to the Red Sea of all places, which is like the most amazing place for wind. And I was learning something new, and everyone, I went with 2 of my girlfriends, but everyone else, we were 28 people. They were all, not experts, but some were experts, but definitely like they've been doing this for years. And I was extremely humbled, learning something new, embracing the pressure, but not to the extent where I was discouraged. And that, I think, is the trick there. So I was looking around, and you talked about social media, you talked about kids and even adults too. I was looking around. Thank goodness I'm a sports psychology expert so I can engage in the good training. But I'm looking around at all these people, and instead of saying, oh my goodness, they're so much better than me, and shaming myself and judging myself, I was looking at everyone and saying, wow, look what I get to become one day. And, what have they achieved that I can achieve? So more of an inspiration instead of a comparison and judgment, because that comparison and judgment can put a lot of pressure on us. Like, I have to be at their level today. No, I don't have to be at their level today. I'm learning, and I'm actually using them to motivate me to want to learn and put a good amount of pressure on myself that maintains some level of confidence so that I get up every day and continue to do it and continue to improve and grow. But a lot of people put pressure on ourselves to be something we can't possibly be right now because we haven't put in the hours yet. We haven't put in the time yet. But we're always looking around at everyone else who's better and faster and smarter. And we don't and we put too much pressure on ourselves, which stops us in our tracks instead of finding the sweet spot of pressure.
Right. And that reminds me of the zone of proximal development, where our mind, when we're trying something new, gets tired faster. And they say, like, after 20 or 30 minutes of trying something new, take a break and then go back to it. Like, literally take a break. So, like, you're learning to play the piano and you're at your piano lesson. You're so mad that you can't play like your piano teacher, but you try and you're playing it slower and all of that. And then take a break. And then the next day come back to it. And it's the same thing with, I don't know, I'm assuming you're at a camp, so you probably had breaks there. But when you got up the third or fourth or fifth time, how did it go? I'm just curious about that.
No, I definitely got better and better. But where there was 3 sessions every day, I couldn't do all 3 sessions. I was absolutely exhausted mentally, emotionally, physically. So I did 2 of the 3 sessions. I took a break. And then, and sometimes the 2-hour sessions became an hour and a half, sometimes the hour and but it's okay. And you're right. It's not about the pressure. It's about managing the pressure effectively so that we can maintain. See, in my world, in the world of performance, in my humble opinion, the difference between arousal and anxiety, or nervousness and anxiety, or pressure and anxiety, good pressure, is confidence. As soon as we start to really doubt ourselves, like truly, like the doubt is now in the driver's seat. I think doubt's a normal thing we all have, but if it's leading us, then we're hitting the anxiety, fear, worry, frustration, anger. But when we're feeling confident, we can still be pushing ourselves. This is going to be challenging, but I know I have, like you said in the piano, I know I have 10 more minutes in me, and then I'll take a break.
Yes.
So we have to just manage it right. We have to have, and I'm not saying realistic expectations. I don't even want to go there, because if you're learning something new, you don't know what the expectations should or should not be. But just to maintain a level of confidence, and then you earn more confidence as you go, you can take on more pressure, more stress.
Right. And it starts with the mindset that you started with, which is, I get to be a part of this. I'm learning to do this thing I've never done. And I'm wishing, we'll get back to what you're doing for people, but I'm wishing for the children out there and the teenagers, it's like, you get to try to do whatever it is, paint, dance, sing, whatever. But remember that all of these videos you're watching and pictures and performances you're seeing are people that have put in hundreds or thousands of hours of painfully doing it wrong. And like, think about from your age when you started sport young, is what I was reading. Mm-hmm. And so in a way that possibly gave you a little bit of an advantage over somebody who started later, but not necessarily, because the mindset, you might have had maybe the moves memorized or whatever, but the mindset is so key. And you see that in that's what I always hear people say is, like, in sports, the mindset is really what it is. Like, if the golfer had a bad weekend domestically with his, whoever he's hanging out with or she is hanging out with, then their golf game is off,
Yep.
I don't need to bring up the famous example of that. Something about a tiger, but anyway.
But let me,
yeah.
and it's funny that and it's funny because I'll bring up Lindsey Vonn, who,
yes.
because you mentioned Tiger too, but Lindsey Vonn is actually a perfect example of what you just talked about, the mindset. So Lindsey Vonn is in her 40s now, and she is, after 5.5, 6 years of retirement, she's now come back to the sport of ski racing.
Oh.
With a knee replacement. I don't know any athlete who's retired, had a knee replacement, and then come back to her sport. And in the first year of her competing, she got a silver in one of the World Cups. And, and to listen to her, she is mentally sound. And she's competing against people who weren't even born when she started racing World Cup. I mean, she is double their age. And the physical body takes a toll. And she's gone through so many injuries, but her mindset gives her an advantage. Our mindsets, we cannot underestimate the power of our minds.
It's true. So I told you I was going to ask you more questions, but I have a really dumb example of this. So I'm not like a bowling person. Okay. But identity, I'm a guy who sometimes goes bowling. And I think it's hilarious to go bowling because when I was younger, my mom needed to do something with me in the summertime. So she put me in this bowling league, and I'd never bowled. And I was like 11 years old. And it was literally like a babysitter for like 3 hours, 4 days a week. I was there from like 1 to 4 bowling with these people that were really good at bowling. And then like by the end of the summer, I got really good at it. And I was getting like all these strikes in bowling, like, 160 or something. And so but then I wasn't into it. I was like, that was fun, but like, I want to go back to swimming and playing piano and all the things I like to do. I went back to that and I was like, well, that was cool, but like, it's not my culture. If you've seen The Big Lebowski, it was kind of like that, except there were some teenagers but the adults were kind of like that. So not my scene. But later in life, people occasionally say, do you want to go bowling for entertainment during college or after college? It just, I don't think anyone's really that I know is actually good at it. And I'm not either. But what I notice is I do this experiment with myself where if I really focus and tell myself, you're going to bowl a really good game, and you're going to focus and you're going to make sure that you remember to do the stuff they taught you when you were 11 years old, and you aim it this way and you twist the ball this way, right? When you release and you relax, you're going to beat everybody. And when I do that mindset, I kick everyone's butt. But when I don't, when I just show up, I showed up with my friends one time and they're playing a game like, oh, you're here. Oh no, you're going to rest on your, trophy you won when you were 12. And I was just like, yeah, I'm going to beat you. But I didn't have the mindset. Like I was just kind of goofing off. I was horrible. I bowled like a 60, something like, it's like, it is your mind. And bowling is of course not as, I'm going to get angry emails from bowlers, but it's not as physically demanding. It's not as physically demanding as other sports and like what you did. It's not, but it is mentally. I really think it is mental. So I experiment with myself. So if I do that using that mindset, I can bowl well. And it's nothing. And I don't know what the difference is besides I'm thinking differently.
You have intention. That's the difference.
Intention.
You're showing up. You're showing up with intention, and that's a really powerful psychological tool. I think it's a skill set to show up with intention, because when you have intention, and I'm not saying goals per se, because I don't know that you had a goal to score.
Yeah.
But you had an intention to zone in on specific techniques and tactics that you have learned. You had an intention to perform, and therefore you did. Instead of just saying, I'm just here, but I'm not here with any intention.
I like that. Very good. So let's talk more about you and what you do now, because you've obviously had, career, in sport and then sports psychology, and now basically you're doing a lot of different things from what I read. I mean,
I'm doing the same thing. I'm just applying it to different life domains.
Oh, okay. I like that. Okay. So what I mean is, you had a lot of different clients, I guess I should say, all over the board, from corporate businesses to leaders. Can you tell me a little bit about kind of what you're doing? I'm just kind of curious, like what do you like doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's really going back to sports psychology, which is really embracing pressure and developing unshakable confidence, the confidence that doesn't come and go with the results, It's about optimizing that. And I do that for sport. I also do that in the business world. So keynote speaking and one-on-one coaching and workshop training in the corporate world with leaders and below. And then also in the health and wellness. So we all know, for example, that the apple is healthier than the brownie, that to move is better than not to move. I think we know that, right? To
hope
sleep
so.
is better than not to sleep. But how can we follow through on those? How can we follow through on the goals that we set in the health space? And I always use the principles that I've learned and experienced with in sport, and we apply that to all aspects of life.
Excellent. So yeah, I was talking to you a little bit off camera about kind of like the bottom up of using the experience of performance to help people be able to perform what they have in mind, versus a lot of people take the approach of, this is what I have in my mind, and I'm so frustrated that I can't get it done. And they're kind of like beating the same drum. You're trying to help them kind of come at it from a different angle, I feel. Is that?
Yeah. My mother once bought me a sweatshirt. I still have it, although I've worn it out, but I love it. And it says, move your body, still your mind. And I believe that we earn confidence. I don't believe we're given anything. I believe we earn our confidence. Babies learn that all the time when they're trying to walk, right? They fall down, they get back up, they earn the right to then go from crawl to walk to all the other things. So I'm a big believer in talking about behaviors, things that we can do, which is essentially performance. And then we find a performance. You master that performance, you earn confidence. We step it up. We embrace the pressure. We stepped up to the next level, to the next level. And when it comes to the mind, move your body, still the mind. My personal mantra in my practice is to think less, more strategically. So even with you and your bowling, you showed up and you had a strategic thought of, realizing one of the technical cues that you had learned. So you focused in on a strategy, and then you made things happen for yourself instead of just thinking about anything and everything. So most people will come to me not when they're happy, when they're sad. And they'll come to me and I'm overthinking. Help me overthink. Help me stop overthinking.
Right.
And one of the best ways to do that is start to get them to move with intention. And then they stop thinking because now they're preoccupied and they're thinking more strategically, and then they're building confidence, and then they're like wanting more. So now they start to embrace the pressure, and then they get to realize their true potential.
I love that. Yeah, I think I have lots of reflections on what you just said, because there is Dr. Dan Siegel, who's a Ph.D. psychologist at UCLA. He had this saying that the mind can't mind the mind. And I know it sounds weird, but like what he was trying to say was, like, if you're overthinking or if you're in a hole, you can't just like use the same process to get out of it. So he was kind of talking about these realms of life that basically you almost have to like wrestle yourself to get out of that position. And most of our positions, what I mean by that is the stuck position on the computer or on the phone, just like passively consuming content or just randomly thinking about all the problems that you have, right? That's going to disturb your performance in anything you're doing, right? Including eating. You spill on yourself. And we've all had those days. We've all had those poetic days where we're like running late and we're like, I'm going to speed into my car and I'm going to hurry up. And then you spill your coffee all over your white shirt. Like I've done that, literally, like a stereotype in a movie. And I'm like, wow, art imitates life, right? But it's true. So being mindful isn't just about meditating. It's about intention, like you said. And it's about, there's also this reflection I see you have built in, because that Dan Siegel was saying, get out of that position. Go reflect, grab a book, go outside, go for a walk. And he has these different domains. You can read his books. It's a whole nother lecture I'm not going to get into, but essentially kind of saying what you're saying, like move your body, get out of that position. And even if you are, not able-bodied, move out of that room, move outside or into a different space to start changing what you're kind of preoccupied with. And
do something, even play the piano, start writing things down instead of just, thinking about them in your head. Do something.
some action, even if the action, but then I hear people go, well, the action isn't going to get me to my goal. Well, right. But you're sitting there doing passive inaction isn't getting you to your goal either. So, well, then what if I don't do it right? Well, that's the whole point. That's how athletes learn. I'm assuming the first time you skied down a hill, you didn't exactly do it perfectly. Am I right?
No. And you just mentioned, the word perfect. And what if I don't do it right?
Mm-hmm.
We do still have to think. I'm a big believer in the right in strategic thinking, because every thought influences your emotions, which then alter your body and then, enhances your performance. But when it comes to perfection, if that is the goal, you've lost before you've even started. So I strive to be perfect. I don't know anyone who comes to my practice who doesn't want to be perfect. I want to be perfect. I want to get every word right. I don't want to stumble. I want to be able to answer all of your questions, Paul. But I also don't demand it of myself, because that's unnecessary negative pressure. So there's the pressure that I want to embrace, and then there's the pressure that is just unnecessary and you're doing yourself a disservice. And the demand of being perfect is one of them. But we need something to replace that with. So while I'm striving to be perfect, with the understanding that it's not going to happen, but while I'm striving for it, equally, I am also looking to be the best recoverer I can be. So if I find myself, at work, and I find myself, missing an email or not being able to think, I'm not going to let myself get down and down and down and spiral into this quicksand of misery. I'm going to say, okay, how do I best recover? Should I open up a different email? Should I take a break? Should I, go to a different task altogether? How do I just pick myself right back up? But it's with action. So how am I going to be the best recoverer? And that's a lesson from sport. The best athletes are not the perfect athletes. The athletes that stand on top of the podium at the end of the day are the ones that best recovered. They did not dwell on their mistakes or their teammates' mistake. They quickly picked up and did something to recover. And we need to practice the same principle.
Oh, I like that. Yeah. For instance, this is the typical person. It's like, I have a workout goal to work out 5 days a week for 45 minutes. I'm going to do cardio this day, legs this day, arms this day. And then they're like, oh no, I missed Tuesday because my dog needed some. And then they're like, oh, that's it. Screw it. And they just I'm going to go buy a big thing of potato chips from Costco and I'm giving up. And so it's like that, right? So I make this joke with my clients that when they're trying to get started on something new, and it's hard to start something new, as I say this, listen, I have a goal to exercise intentionally 4 times a week. And they're like, do you make it? And I'm like, sometimes. And sometimes I exercise unintentionally by going for a walk with my dog because they're demanding it, right? Or I want to go on a bike ride with my partner because she loves bike riding. And I've just done it, right? But then other time, but it's not my perfect little gym workout I want to do, right? But the idea that I'm striving for the 4 days a week and not expecting myself to be perfect allows me to get it 70% of the time. And therefore, I'm in okay shape. And I understand that if I hired a personal trainer, which my friend did, he feels guilty if he doesn't go to work and has all these other emotional cues. Plus, he's paying this person, so that he is getting his 5 days in because he feels like he's going to let down Randy, at the gym. It's he doesn't want to do that. So there's ways to trick yourself into it. But right now, it's not my number one goal to be physically fit. It's just I want to live longer, so I do that, right? So it's not like I'm not training for anything. So I tell my clients, I'm going for the 4 days, okay? And also I like to read, so I'm trying to put in. I'm going to make sure I read. I want to make sure I read X number of days a week, and how can I put that in my schedule? But obviously, life comes up. You have stuff in your life, personal things come up, strange events. But I'm still going for the goal, and I always have it in mind. Therefore, I try to be flexible about when I can achieve that. Or maybe I read for a longer time because I couldn't read on Tuesday. I'll read an hour on Thursday, right? Or if I problem solve further, okay, I didn't get my exercise in. What if I download the audiobook and go for a long 2 or 3 mile walk, right? So being flexible in our thinking and watching our habits is what I'm kind of hearing some of this is, but then also action taking, which I think is tough in our society that wants us to be passive consumers of terrible food, mid-level television, and social media. I don't know. That I feel like that's what's being sold to us. I'm not sure if you're...
I 100% agree with that. And with that, then I sometimes think we set the wrong goals. So we might be setting a goal to exercise, but the thing that's getting in our way is the television addiction.
Mm-hmm.
So you're never going to achieve your goal of exercise because you have a television addiction. So what you need to do is set a goal around breaking that obstacle of television watching. Forget about exercise for a second. We'll get there, but we first have to tackle the obstacle. The obstacle is, to take the title of Ryan Holiday's book, the obstacle is the way. We have to look at the obstacle. I don't think this is what his book actually is focused on, but the obstacle is what I want to focus on. So when people come to me and saying, I want to exercise, you have good intentions. You can do it, but you're focusing on the wrong thing. We actually have to focus on breaking the habit of the television watching so that you can then go and exercise. Right. And then the other thing that I was going to mention, what you were talking about, is your intentions of working out 4 times a week. And sometimes it'll look like this and other times it'll look like that. And if you missed it here, you'll make up for it there. What you're doing is something that I strongly believe, which is giving yourself some grace, never letting yourself off the hook. Because we give ourselves too much grace. And like you said, it's Wednesday. Well, this week's ruined. I'll just go and do whatever I want. And then I'll start again on Monday. We all know that. Everyone's laughing right now because they've been there. So giving yourself some grace, absolutely. Things happen. We're not about demanding perfection. And never let yourself off the hook. Do something with something will always be better than nothing.
Love that. Yes, it's so true. It's so true. And I love that you're thinking about the television addiction. You're right. If you have an obstacle to cure, how are you supposed to, it's the same thing. If you go to your doctor and you have the bad kind of cholesterol, I think it's called, I don't know which one it is, but like you're eating I don't want to be sued. You're eating chicken sandwiches that are fried in deep fat oil, that has a big line everywhere I go. I've never had it in my life, actually. But if you're eating that every day and then you go to your doctor and they're like, hey, you gotta get your cholesterol down. You're like, I know, I'll just eat chicken sandwiches and then go to the gym. Like, no, the doctor's going to say you need to eat 1 chicken sandwich a week, not 10, and not those waffle fries or whatever they give you. And you have an obstacle to cure. And so then what's the alternative? If you don't do that, then we're going to have to put a stent in your heart and put you on statins, and then your CoQ10's off. So it's like, it's the same thing. I always tell people, like, what you're doing with your body when you're not paying attention still counts. So,
ooh, I love that.
So
Yeah.
I used to go to yoga. I was a big yoga person. Right now in my life, I don't have as much. I'm not allotting enough time. That's an excuse. I'm not allotting enough time to go to yoga. So I'm stretching at home and I'm doing some stuff, whatever. But I loved yoga class. But I had this observation that I was always doing yoga. And I don't mean that in the stupid, cheesy way, like we're all doing yoga. Like, I get that. No, I'm saying I'm doing yoga. It's the bad kind of yoga. I'm in my chair, looking at my computer, locking up my shoulders and leaning forward on my pelvis, which is bad yoga. It is making you hyperkyphotic. It is causing your skin tissues and fascia to lock up. And then when I go to 1 hour of stretching yoga, I'm supposed to all of a sudden be like this, Lululemon model, like, with my feet in the air. No, that person in my class, who was very annoying because they'd always do headstands, they did yoga, 4 hours a day. That's how they could do that. I'm doing it 1 hour a day, and I'm, comparing myself to them. And then I realized, no, I am doing yoga. They're doing the healthy kind. I'm doing the unhealthy kind. I have to be real about what my choices are here, right? This has an effect on me.
We're all motivated. We're motivated to move. We're motivated to sit still.
Yeah. So we've got a few minutes left. I want to talk about, you work with corporations, you do speaking engagements, you work with individuals, mm-hmm. leaders. Mm-hmm. I'm assuming they call you when things are going wrong in a business, right? Right? Something like that.
Typically people don't call me to say everything is amazing. I mean, they will call me to say that it worked. I love that phone call. It worked. Yes. But no, not initially. Yeah, that's what's so exciting about what I do. So it's always the same content, but in groups and individuals, in business and wellness and sport.
So wellness too. So you do the business stuff, but you also could help people that are just like, since you're a coach, I'm assuming if somebody was sitting there in Florida right now and was like, Haley, I need new habits. Can you help me? You could help them. Could you do that?
I can.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. I used to
Excellent.
teach health behavior change at the university. So sports psychology and health behavior change.
Okay.
Because like I said, I do believe that we all know that generally speaking, we all know that the apple is healthier than the brownie. It's just a matter of making those moves so that we choose the apple over the brownie most of the time. I love my chocolate, don't get me wrong, but I will choose the apple and then I will indulge when I want it. The Nutella is really my preference.
Oh, I've got something for you. This is not a product endorsement. I'm going to say it on air because I love this company. Fine and Raw out of Brooklyn. They
Never heard.
make 4 versions of basically Nutella with coconut sugar, and it is so
Ooh.
addicting that you will fight over it with whoever you share food with. I
Well,
promise.
keep it out of the house. I'll
I have,
indulge in it when I
I
leave
have,
the house.
I've gotten multiple people addicted to it, and it's healthier than the regular Nutella because it's
I'm sure it is.
less sugary. But you also wrote a book, so if people, maybe they're like, "Hey, Paul, cool podcast," but like
Yeah.
I don't know if I can afford, a Ph.D. level sports psychologist to personally coach me. Can you tell us about this book?
Yeah, it's titled Personal Podium, and it's all about it's for sport and life. And inside, it's my take on performance psychology. So we all have heard of goal setting. So for me, I believe that we need just 3 goals, maybe not even all 3. Visualization. This is my take on visualization. And in addition to my take on all these tools, I share stories of athletes, collaboration of athletes that I've worked with so that you can read the content and then read the story and then have the idea of how to apply it to your life based on the story.
I love that. Yeah, and I mean, I think you don't know what you don't know. And that's why people listen to podcasts. They want to learn something new. And I love reading books, even if I don't even read the whole book. I have read so many books because of this podcast that even if I've read half of the book, I've learned something from that, and then I can apply that. And if I got really serious about a certain book, like your book, for instance, you can really change your life from a book. Now, it does take practice, and you may need a coach because you might hit that obstacle, that blockade, so to speak, that's keeping you from getting to those structured goals and gaining that confidence, right? And and especially with confidence, I feel like sometimes hard to do in isolation. I think confidence is often made through experience, but also through relationships. So I do think having a coach and a therapist for confidence is a key one. But I think that I'm gonna say this book will be in the show notes. It'll be linked, and it was a bestseller on Amazon, so that's awesome. Maybe it still is a bestseller. I'm not sure how long it's been out, but that's exciting. So okay, what is, not to put you on the spot, but I'm queuing you up for it.
Put me on the spot.
Yeah, well, that gives you a cue to think of what I'm going to ask. But here we go. What is some, it could be any listener, like maybe a listener that in my mind, I have certain listeners that I'm speaking to that are out there. Maybe they just didn't have good role models. Maybe they don't have access to certain things. What, just for whoever your listener is, I don't know, just like somebody out there that maybe needs a little bit of extra inspiration. What is something that you would say to them about trying to meet their goals, or maybe just become who they are? I don't know. It could be anything. I don't know. I didn't mean to box you in with that question.
I'll share a story. And I think a lot of us are sometimes afraid to, I said people come to me when they're sad, but there are people who are afraid to feel into their sadness because they're afraid of getting trapped in there. And I remember when I got divorced, so this is life skill. I remember when I got divorced, it hit me hard. It was a very long relationship. And I'll never forget, my father came up to me and looked at me and said, "Cry so that you can then get up." Because I was trying just to get up. Just trying to get up, but I hadn't really cried, like really, really, really like, and so I was doing it a little bit, but so he said, cry so that you can then get up. And whether it's an athlete or a business person or a health enthusiast coming to my practice, again, obviously they're not coming because they're doing great. They're coming to me because they don't want to feel the pain that they're feeling. And the first thing I actually do is help them to feel the pain that they're feeling. I want you to be upset. If you weren't upset about this failure, whatever the failure or loss is, then I'd wonder why you were utilizing so many resources and putting forth so much time and energy into it. Be sad. And then let's figure out how to decrease the probability that it'll happen again. And let's see how we can actually, get back up and become stronger for it. But there's a moment, everyone says that we need to learn from our mistakes. 100% agree. But while you're going through it, it's sucky, and it's okay for it to be sucky. So feel it, be sad, so that you can then get up and learn from it and move forward.
I love that. That's very sage advice. And I think that is something in our culture we'd like to avoid. And so I think that I'm hoping people hear that and resonate with that. And they can get connected with you if they want, or just learn about you from your websites and all of your media and your book. So I will have all those notes in the show notes. And I really appreciate your time, Dr. Haley. I've really learned a lot already from you and in this short conversation.
Thanks, Paul. Happy to be here.
Thank you.
And there you have it. This has been another episode of the Intentional Clinician podcast. If you are enjoying the show, please leave us a rating on iTunes or share the show with people you know. I would surely appreciate it. As some of you know, I am passionate about preventing future violence in the United States. I have started a nonprofit with colleagues called the National Violence Prevention Hotline, which is a 501c3 organization. We are endeavoring to gain funding and collaborators and volunteers so that we can start a 24/7 hotline and chat line to reach potential perpetrators before they may act violently. It is a bold effort to curb violence and save innocent lives by working to connect with potential offenders while they are in the planning stages of violence, help to de-escalate them, and provide resources so that they can get appropriate professional help. The National Violence Prevention Hotline is looking to open up a conversation about violence in society, the causes, and the solutions. You can learn more by visiting our website at violencepreventionhotline.org. You can get involved by writing your congressperson from our website, sharing it with your network, or even donating to the cause. If you are looking for an EMDR, International Association consultant, I am a consultant and I can help provide 20 hours that you need to become EMDRIA certified. Just check out the show notes and send me a message and see if we're a good fit to work together. If you are in need of counseling, do not hesitate to make an appointment with a local counselor in your area. You can also make an appointment with the excellent clinicians at Health for Life Counseling in Grand Rapids as part of the Trauma Informed Counseling Center of Grand Rapids by visiting www.healthforlifegr.com. And if you are in the state of Michigan, you can also schedule a telehealth appointment. The recording you just listened to consists of the personal opinions of Paul Krauss and his guest, and while these are based upon the literature they have read and the experience in their respective fields, the information on this podcast should not be viewed or thought of as the definitive opinion on any subject. Listening to this podcast is not a substitute for treatment. If you're in a crisis, please call 911 or the National Crisis Line at 988. Support your local bookstore by shopping at bookshop.org. That's www.bookshop.org. It donates a percentage of sales to local bookstores all across the United States, which I think gives character to our cities and a place to hang out and a place to explore. You can order from the comfort of your own home online while supporting businesses near you. If you are a therapist and you are not involved in your local counseling or therapist or social work organization, please get involved to at least pay dues so that we can have lobbyists help keep mental health care accessible at the government level, and also expanding into schools and other places that need it. And also, if you didn't know, counseling organizations and professional organizations are working to keep us from becoming gig workers for a lot of large corporations who are coming in and trying to buy up local counseling agencies or basically pay you what they pay for people to deliver food to your house. So, get involved. Until next time on The Intentional Clinician, I wish you all a safe and peaceful week.